It could be months before 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports appeal is heard. RFK Racing announced that they have a major announcement coming on Tuesday. I think we all know what it's going to be, but we'll talk about it. And Kyle Busch will be making USAC midget starts, plus he's headed to the Chili Bowl. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. We're not going to talk about race manipulation on today's show, so there's that, but we are going to talk about NASCAR's ongoing saga that's apparently going to run longer, potentially, than the Game of Thrones saga, which, as I said that reference, I was like, I've never read those books. I have no idea what the actual reference to that is. I just know that George R.R. Martin takes forever with it, and I feel like it could possibly be months until 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports appeal is heard by the court. So earlier this week, the two teams did appeal, for their injunction to be overturned. Obviously, that was the news last week, is the judge denying the team's request for an injunction. The teams applied for that appeal. It was documented by the, I believe, 4th District Court. But the earliest best possible case for the teams is the earliest it could be heard is December 10th through the 13th. That is the next time that I believe the 4th District is hearing oral arguments in this appeal process. The teams would need an expedited process for that to happen. The problem with that is NASCAR seemingly opposes this expedited process. NASCAR, if they get their way, because right now NASCAR opposes the process because they believe that the schedule is reasonable and appropriate at this time. If that does happen, the earliest that this appeal could be heard is March 18th. That is well over a month into the season. That very much works against what the teams want because, as we've noticed before, they would like to have their charters for the 2025 season. And going into the season or month in without those charters and without an answer really works against them. So NASCAR has until Monday morning to officially oppose the request for this expedited appeals process. We'll have to wait and see if they do officially oppose it there. But if that does happen, we're looking at the earliest, if the courts decide not to expedite it, at the earliest, March 18th, could be even later than that. Ultimately, that's like NASCAR's idea, right? Like, is to drag this out and really discourage these two teams from continuing their litigation. Now, is that going to discourage them? Who knows? Very much up in the air at this point. But this is just the next, portion of this ongoing saga, which is not going to get cleared up anytime soon. We are absolutely going through the holiday season, wondering whether or not 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports will have charters next year to race. It also probably makes Riley Herbst and Zane Smith very uneasy heading into the holidays, not really knowing what their future is within the sport. Will they be in a third car? Is it going to be an open car? Are they going to have charters? What exactly is happening there remains up in the air. Obviously, Zane is the rumor driver for Front Row Motorsports. Riley Herbst is the rumored third driver over at 2311 Racing. No formal announcements from either side because, we're still waiting on this whole charter saga to go away. It's not anytime soon. NASCAR has dug their heels in. In fact, their legal team even added in a new member on Friday, which will really help them out in the appeals process. The NASCAR defense team added Gregory Garr, who is a former U.S. Solicitor General who regularly argues about appeals in U.S. District Court as well as at the Supreme Court level. They brought in a big dog in this, and Jeffrey Kessler and 2311 Racing Front Row Motorsports are absolutely going to do their homework the same way they've been doing it all along. I guess if you're kind of a legal nerd about all of this, it is kind of like two powerhouses going head to head against each other. It's the Yankees versus Dodgers. Might be a bad example considering the Dodgers absolutely wipe the floor with the Yankees, but you get the idea here. They've assembled super teams, and now we get to see them battle it out in court. Probably, potentially, but maybe even as late as next March or potentially April in the process. So we'll wait and see how all of it plays out, but we'll find out Monday if NASCAR will officially oppose the team's request to expedite this appeals process. Roush Fenwick Keselowski Racing announced on Friday that they have an announcement, a major announcement coming on Tuesday. I think we all hate announcements of announcements, but this is more of a media advisory that there is a big announcement coming on Tuesday. Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, team president Steve Newmark will all be in attendance. And looking at the docket, there's an interesting name on there as well. It's the PR person for Tag Geschichter's marketing agency, who has long been the person for Kroger as well. So if you want to connect the dots here, the rumors have continuously said that Kroger is headed over to Roush Fenwick Keselowski Racing in 2025 to sponsor a third car, presumably that of Ryan Preece. Obviously, there's been a ton of smoke around there. I would even argue that there's been fire even this past weekend, leaving Phoenix when Brad and Ryan Preece walked out of the track together while the other three SHR guys were filming content together on pit road, missing their fourth. The Three Musketeers instead of the quartet. It was Ryan Preece, not a part of what happened there at the end of the SHR, or the end of Phoenix for the SHR teams. I've heard various different reports out of it. I've heard that he didn't want to be a part of it. I heard there was a miscommunication. I guess it doesn't really matter. Stewart-Haas Racing doesn't exist anymore. Ryan Preece is a free agent, likely headed to Roush Keselowski Racing in 2025 in a third car with Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher as his teammates. We've said continuously on here that RFK Racing believes that Ryan Preece has not shown his true potential in the Cup Series yet. I know it's a debatable topic. I know people in the comments are going to be like, the guy stinks. Look at his numbers. I'm just relaying the information here. His numbers aren't good. They aren't good. There's no way around that. When you compare him to his teammates at Stewart-Haas Racing, again, they're not very good, especially like a guy like Noah Gragson, who came in as a rookie this year and beat him handily. Like, he had a position better in average finish, a 4-position average in better start. He had more top 10s, the same number of top 5s. But for a guy that realistically only ran half a rookie season in 2023 and then a full season this year, you would expect the more experienced veteran to perform higher, but whatever. Ryan Preece likely headed over to RFK. We'll get to see what he can do. We know those are race-winning cars. I mean, heck, even Joey Hand nearly won this year at Chicago on tire strategy and everything like that, and we saw him fade later in the race. But there for a minute, I was like, are we about to watch like a repeat of these one-offs go to victory lane, SVG in 23, Hand? And no, didn't happen. Doesn't matter. So that's expected to be the announcement on Tuesday. We'll wait and see how all of it goes down. Maybe hopefully we get the car number and everything that goes along with that. The Kroger sponsorship, of course, is leaving JTG Daugherty Racing, headed over to RFK next year. There was some talk earlier this year that it could potentially head to Joe Gibbs Racing. Ultimately, that's not going to happen. What is the future of Tad and Jody Geschickter in the series? I'm not 100% sure on that. Obviously, they are out of the ownership side of things over at JTG Daugherty Racing, which I assume maybe will undergo a name change there, considering the JTG portion of the name doesn't exist anymore. So we'll have to wait and see how all of that plays out, but that's expected to be an announcement. And we got word on Thursday that Kyle Busch will be making his USAC midget debut in a little over a week's time when the series heads to Bakersfield on Tuesday, November 26th. Kyle will be behind the wheel of the number 51 Lucas Oil Flow Sports midget with power from TRD by the look of the pictures on it there. Couldn't get to victory lane with Chevrolet in the Cup Series this year. Maybe TRD can take him back to victory lane in a different series. Of course, he won a truck race earlier this year as well. So there's that. Chevy did get into victory lane, just not in the Cup Series before people come at me in the comments and are like, relax. It's okay. It's okay. Kyle, though, will also be making his first ever start in the Turkey Night Grand Prix at Ventura, California, on Saturday, November 30th. And then he will also be making his debut in the Chili Bowl, just adding another major name to the long list of motorsport stars that have made starts at the Chili Bowl. He'll also be racing Tulsa Shootout with his son, Brexton. They put out a video announcing all of this happening. And I'll be honest, Kyle Busch, not an actor. Brexton, actually, bit of a better actor than Kyle, but it is cool to see him be able to do all of this with his kid. Obviously, it's a bit like the Bronny, LeBron type of situation happening. Obviously, there's a lot of father-son duos in racing as well. I think Brexton will probably end up playing away games. He's at least traveling to Tulsa, where Bronny won't leave Los Angeles. But we don't need to talk about that. For Brexton, though, it's cool that he's going to be able to go to Tulsa Shootout for his class and everything like that and compete. For Kyle, it's really cool that he's going to race at Chili Bowl in the midget. I know last year he said that his wife wasn't too fond of midgets and didn't really want he or Brexton hopping into one of those. Not sure what changed there. Happy it changed, though, because I think Kyle Busch adds a level of star power to the Chili Bowl. Obviously, it's a race that doesn't need it, especially when guys like Kyle Larson and others show up. Whether or not Larson shows up to Chili Bowl, Not sure. He will be racing some of the USAC California midget races next week, as well as the Turkey Night Grand Prix as well. So you got the Kyle and Kyle show happening there. But it's cool to see Kyle Busch kind of make this transition over to dirt a little bit later in his career. Obviously, a few years ago, he was big into the super late model stuff, running Snowball and Rattler and stuff like that back when KBM had the Rowdy chassis manufacturing or whatever it was called back then. And now to kind of switch over to dirt stuff, kind of where his kid is racing at. It's cool. I mean, Kyle Busch didn't win a Cup Series race this year. Yeah, it sucks, right? But he is still a two-time champion, still the winningest driver in NASCAR history across all three series. He's a guy that, is a big name. He gets a lot of recognition everywhere he goes. And dirt racing, as much as I love all the stars of dirt racing, anytime you can add an even bigger name into it is good for the sport. It potentially brings new eyeballs to it. It's like Dale Jr. running late model stock races, Kyle Larson going to the Indy 500. Yeah, IndyCar has some big time stars, but attracting a name like Kyle Larson or Fernando Alonso is always good for the sport. And I like seeing guys from different disciplines try out different races. So at the end of the day, I think it's a win-win for everybody. So let me know in the comments what you think about the 2311 FRM appeal, potentially being pushed months from now. RFK's announcement, as well as Kyle Busch headed to run some midget races, as well as the Chili Bowl. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter @BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook @BreakHardBlog.